But very important to know is that you need more than vocabulary to read with understanding. Sometimes teachers think that if students have a rich vocabulary, they'll be able to understand any text. It doesn't work like that. You also need, or students need to have knowledge of the world as well, okay? Why? Why do you think you need background knowledge? Well, as Daniel Willingham says here, oftentimes people leave out information when they write. Also, sometimes people think that, oh yeah, I'm referring to something that everybody knows. I don't need to go into this in more detail. Everybody knows about this, but that's not how it happens, okay? So having background knowledge helps students become better readers at comprehending text. Look at this sentence here. All of you, take a minute here to read it. It says, the brain scan is fuzzy because the patient wore makeup. Now, as Kostas here, I can read this. I understand every single word that I'm reading, but it makes no sense to me. Like the brain, somebody had a brain scan, but it's fuzzy. Then the patient wore, like for me, it means nothing. Why? Well, first of all, let's break it down. The first idea is that the brain scan is fuzzy. The second idea is the patient wore makeup. What's the connection here? Well, see, brain scans use magnets, and metal makes images fuzzy. And some makeup contains trace amounts of metal. There's little bits of metal in it. So if you don't know this, if you don't have this background information, this sentence means nothing to you. That's what happened with me when I was reading this. I was like, hey, what does that mean? All right, so as we said, background knowledge is very important to reading a text and comprehending it. And that's why what I'm asking you here is, what is the value of having content area instruction? In other words, when you're teaching English, it's also good that you're teaching, let's say, a little bit of science through English. You're teaching math through English, a little bit of geography through English. But some of the value, okay, of including content area is that it breaks down the compartmentalization of knowledge. What I mean here is that students should be making connections between subjects that or topics that they're learning. They shouldn't say, walk into a classroom, okay, now I'm learning geography. Okay, finished, now I'm learning history. No, learning is all about making and connections, okay? Now, prior knowledge of the world and different experiences with the language and with the text help students create, again, relationships among various sources of information. So again, in our books, we've always tried to incorporate different kinds of text, different kinds of information, so students can make these connections and enhance their learning. I think this next point is also very important. It allows students to contribute something, even though they're not particularly good at English. You know, you may have some students in your classes, I'm sure you've come across, where they might know a lot about cellular phones, or they might know a lot about sports, okay? So by having a variety of texts in your books, okay, you can give every student the opportunity to shine. In other words, to be the star of the lesson, because they have so much knowledge about this topic and they can contribute. So I like that idea of, you know, having different kinds of topics in the books, okay? And this is something that we've particularly done in our books at MM2, encourage and have variability, right? Different kinds of information. And it also helps reinforce and revise knowledge about the real world. Now, the topics will engage students' interests. Okay, again, this is something, as I said, you have here variety. It's not the same things always. You know, you can also set up different ways of having students work together. You know, you have them collaborate, sharing knowledge with each other. And it also helps with cross-curricular activities, also help with self-assessment. In other words, you know, students can say that, you know what, I'm really good at this subject, or I'm really good at, you know, these kind of texts. So having this variety can help students improve. You know, they did this experiment, all right, just to talk about, again, background knowledge, where they divided the students into two groups, okay? Half the group, they knew a lot about, you know, they were, first of all, half the group of the students were very good readers. The other half were what you call poor readers, okay? They were not very good at reading. But the text that they gave him was about baseball, all right? And so what happened is that the students that were very good at English but knew nothing about the sport actually did poorly on that quiz. But the students that were poor readers or average readers but knew so much about the sport of baseball, they actually outperformed the good readers. So just to reiterate my point that having a variety of texts, exposing students to different kinds of reading material, this is something that is going to help them with comprehension. Okay, look at this little passage right here. I can read this. I pretty much know every word I'm reading, but seriously, this means nothing to me, this passage right here. It might have as well have been written in another language. I have no idea what this text is saying. It's actually talking about the sport of cricket. All right, so again, I'm a good reader. I can read it, but again, because I have no background knowledge, I cannot understand any of this. Do we have any cricket fans out there? Anybody know anything about cricket? Well, yeah, I see. Okay, great. So again, this is just to make my point here that background knowledge does affect how a student goes about understanding a text.